All right, today is Wednesday, August 2nd. This is a hybrid special meeting starting at 6 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. Will you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Kristen, would you mind doing the roll call, please?
Counselor Seither. Here. Counselor Clucci.
Here.
Counselor Shute. Here. Counselor Katerina.
Here.
Counselor Hamel.
Here.
Counselor McGee.
Here.
Chairman Anderson.
Here. So next is order number 23-085, act on the request for an executive session pursuant to Title I, 405.6.c to consult with legal counsel regarding a real estate matter pertaining to a possible land acquisition relating to the school project. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Kristen, would you mind calling the roll, please?
Counselor Seither.
Yes.
Counselor Clucci.
Yes.
Counselor Shute.
Yes.
Counselor Katerina.
Yes.
Hamel.
Yes.
Counselor McGee.
Yes.
Chairman Anderson.
Yes. So we will be back no later than 6:30. So for those in the audience, if you need to go get a drink or go to the restroom, we'll be back hopefully in the next 30 minutes. And same for those online. Audience, I just want to set the stage a little bit for how the meeting is going to operate tonight. So today, first, we're going to start off with a presentation that I'm going to walk through that highlights the primary terms of the option agreement that we have before us for action tonight. After we've had asked any questions that are for our attorney or anyone else in terms of what's before us as a body, then I will open it up for public comment if there's anybody who wants to offer any public comment. After that, I'll put it on the floor for discussion and ultimately a vote. So there will be an opportunity for public comment, but I just want to make sure that you guys are aware. We're gonna kind of work through this as a body first, ask questions, and then open it up for the public if there are any other questions that they want to ask. So I'm gonna share the screen. All right. So we are here tonight really because at the beginning of the year, we set two goals as a body. One, to support the school department and their pursuit for a solution for their new school, as well as pursuing municipal land and school land. So those were two key goals that the council set out this year. And as we worked on the school building committee and partnered with them, we identified the Downs as a potential place to place the new school. So we've been at it for quite some time. It's been a long 8 months. I will say this was done in a good faith effort by both parties to really try and find a compromise that worked for both of us. Though, you know, because there's a critical path to potentially get the school on the ballot for next year, where we have a council action on the 16th potentially. I called pencils down and said, you know, it's time for the negotiations to come to a close. So what's before us tonight is an option agreement. It is not one that, you know, both parties have fully agreed to at this point, but it is time for decisions to be made, for things to move forward. So that way we can hopefully work together to build a school. So just to highlight for the public what the scope is. So originally, when this first came out through our LOI, we were talking about purchasing a little over 25 acres, but since work has been done by the school building committee, we've determined that we only need the main parcel for the land. So there's a 21.87 acre parcel, which is really the scope of this land deal at this point. We no longer need the smaller portion that was originally dedicated for stormwater, because now that's being factored into the construction of the school on the main site. Oops. So in terms of the summary of the key terms, and again, there's a lot more in the option agreement if people looked into it. But the real key mechanics are the price, which is in the option agreement listed at 7.21 million. I'll talk a little bit about that. There's shared infrastructure cost at around 3 million to support the surrounding roadway network for the school. There's some zoning, TIF, and CA adjustments that were discussed as part of this, as well as one area that prior in our LOI that we hadn't resolved was how is the town going to pay for the land? And again, what we landed on was this is just going to be a bond. We're not going to do anything with impact fees or anything that were initially contemplated. So if this were to go to closing, it would be through bond monies that the taxpayers would have to approve. It contemplates access to Sawyer Road, where the Crossroads team had agreed to convey their existing ownership of Trackview Terrace to the town at no cost to create that access point. There was a $25,000 a month reservation fee that would start in December. And lastly, this deal, if it were to go to closing, or if we went to the end of the option period, would alleviate section 8.16 of the CEA, which basically requires the Downs to reserve land for a school. However, if for some reason we weren't able to get a school to pass, it does allow for the condition for the town to work with the Downs to still acquire 5 to 10 acres of land for other municipal purposes. So purchase price. And again, I would say this is probably the one area right now which is a critical area where we haven't achieved 100% alignment. So, you know, when per the letter of intent, which really outlined a process that we would follow if we didn't get two appraisals that were within 105% of each other. The council has decided that we're going to go with with the appraisal price. So the appraisal process has been an interesting process, and to be transparent with the public, we initially met with the Downs to try and work to make sure that we could come up with agreeable items to try and create objective appraisals based on the same assumptions so that we could hopefully get an apples to apples comparison. We got the appraisals in on 6/30. Our appraisal came in at 5.9%, and the Downs came in significantly higher, greater than the 105%. Given the disparity, both parties got together with their appraisals to see what could be done to realign those assumptions to see if we could get them closer. So we received a supplemental review adjustment with multifamily comps, which was more aligned with the original assumptions. We provided our appraiser. Our appraiser came back at 7.54 million. And then through his final adjustments, he ultimately decided, looking at the 5.9 and the 7.5, that based on his professional opinion, a fair and reasonable purchase price would be $7 million. And again, the Downs and their reappraisal still came in over 105% of our appraisal. And so at that time, the council advised that we would follow the LOI, take our $7 million appraisal and add 3%, which got us to the $7.2 million purchase price that's listed in the packet. Again, method of payment we decided was going to be on bond proceeds. So when it came to infrastructure costs, which was again something that was contemplated in the LOI that still needed to be defined, we worked with the Downs. We looked at the roadway network that was required based on what the school committee provided, in addition to other access points that aren't in existence today. I will say that, you know, for the town and the Downs, I think this was something we quickly got to in terms of alignment. You know, and here and on the next slide, really kind of indicate the roadway network. So there's a road coming through here that would connect to Trackview Terrace, along with the main roadway that gets you into the school, with another access road that is predominantly to serve as emergency access. The Downs agreed to bear the full cost and bring utilities over to the property with this blue line, and then to ensure that there's good transportation from other entrances of the Downs. There's a roadway here that needs to be built in order to get, you know, buses from parts of Scarborough to the school, in addition to a roundabout that would be built to help with traffic flow. So in totality, these were all of the roadways needed to support the project, totaling in around 9 million in total. And through the conversations and discussions with the Downs, in the option agreement, it contemplates the town essentially, you know, paying for about a third of those. So a third would be paid for by the town, and a third would, or 2/3 would be paid for by the Downs. You know, a school project of this size has unique needs, which is why we agreed to pay our portion, in addition to, you know, this likely having to reprioritize the time for other work for the Downs. And so we felt like $3 million was a reasonable request, and likely compared to other offsite costs for other sites, this was a, you know, based on expert opinion, this was, you know, a reasonable cost estimate for us to bear. So the agreement also contemplates some rezoning, TIF area adjustments, and a CEA adjustment. So currently today, the Downs owns contiguous land to the CPD district. So you can kind of see in this visual property that they've purchased and owned. And so this is the property that we contemplated would be rezoned to CPD. And then as well, parts of this would be moved into the TIF district. So the TIF is essentially the mechanism that allows us to capture and shield value, as well as opens the door for including this and the CEA for the Downs. So this would essentially be adding 34 additional acres into the CPD to allow for them to, you know, as they build and develop theirs, they would be able to use that for additional value from the CEA that they could capture. Part of this parcel here, about 9 acres, is part of the school parcels. So not all of this is necessarily, would be built, for housing or anything of that nature. A good chunk would actually be for the school. So why would we do this? I think that's a question we get a lot. And I think as part of the, negotiation and the LOI, we talked about it. We shared the same slide where when it comes to rezoning this, there is financial benefit to the town based on the current zoning, based on analysis that was done by Karen Martin from SEDCO. If we did nothing and kept the VR4 zone or the parts of that they own that is VR4 the same, really the town's losing money. And that's really due to the fact that it would essentially be zoned for single family, that tends to operate at a loss from a cost to serve perspective for the town. And so doing nothing would be essentially, as it got developed, it would not produce additional value for the town. If, looking at other scenarios of what the Downs could do with the rezoning, essentially the average, net value it could bring to the town in terms of incremental value, that would, be post cost to serve. So this would be essentially revenue that the town could apply to other investments that we want to make beyond serving the new development, would be about $630,000 if, per year once it was fully developed. So really the total net benefit to the town, the margins, if you look at it, would be about 1.3 million of money that we wouldn't have by the time this was fully developed, that we could apply potentially to the school debt or to other investments in the town. So it's really a mechanism to help with tax rate stabilization. So it's a huge benefit to the community to do this, even if it wasn't contemplated as part of this deal. So again, the deal also contemplates Sawyer Road access and improvements. So Trackview Terrace, the Crossroads Holding does have some easements there that they've agreed to convey to the town at no cost. We know that this is complicated in terms of ownership, where there have been some conversations with some of the owners that are most likely impacted on Trackview, and I know there's a need to talk to the rest of the Trackview residents, but for the ownership rights that the Downs has, they have agreed to convey that to the town at no cost. And again, not necessarily part of this deal, but just for awareness, there are additional investments planned to improve Sawyer Road to support the traffic. Those are things I asked, if this moves forward, for the school committee and the school board to share at our 8/16 meeting, to talk a little bit more about what the plans are for Sawyer Road and how that's going to be incorporated into the bond. So again, separate, but important for people to know that if Trackview is connected, there is intention to make enhancements along Sawyer Road as well. So the 25,000 option payment, again, I think this was just foreign to a lot of people because, we're buying the land. Why are we paying money? Again, this is pretty standard in a real estate transaction to pay earnest money. The fact is if this were to go to closing, that earnest money would go towards the purchase price. So it wouldn't necessarily be money that the town would lose. It's just a component in the deal that we've agreed to. Again, section 8.16 in the CA reserving school land. So essentially, if this option agreement were to be approved tonight, and if the school were able to pass and we were to get to closing by March 31st, the 8.16 in the CA would be closed. If we were unable to get a school passed, but towards the end of the option period, we do have that option though to negotiate 5 to 10 acres of land, and the Downs would still be considered met for 8.16. So just in terms of next steps, so we're here tonight to discuss and review the deal, potentially authorize the town manager to sign it. Then we would need our partners to sign it before we could build a school and move a school forward, or move the referendum forward at our 8/16 meeting. Ultimately, though, I think the point is whatever we decide tonight, we're really authorizing the town manager to enter an arrangement, but it's going to be ultimately up to the voters, because this land deal will be incorporated in the total bond for the school. So this would be part of that entire package that would come forward when it comes forward to voters to decide if they support the school and the land. So the decisions we make tonight aren't final because the final decision makers are actually the public. So just want to share that in closing, and that you do have to vote for this. A lot of people still think that the school is done, and it's no, you have to actually come out and vote. That's something we keep hearing, is that, you know, people aren't aware that you have to vote for the school, and you will have to vote for the school, and it will include any costs associated with this land deal. So with that, I'm going to open it up to the counselors if you have any questions for myself, or I think we have our attorney here in case there's any specific questions related to the deal, related to anything in the actual option document. So Pete, if you want to come up to the podium in case there's questions. And again, this isn't deliberation, this is just questions. So questions on the deal. Councilor Pucci?
Yeah, thank you. I know a lot of time and effort went into this. I do have a couple clarifying questions that I don't fully understand yet. So striking 8.16 through an option agreement, I guess when I read the CEA, there's a specific requirement to reserve land in there on their master plan. The way I read it, that's met when they actually put a site for a school on their master plan, and they've satisfied that. I suspect if we come to agreement that they'll do that, that they'll have to file a subdivision plan or something along those lines. But if we don't come to agreement, would separate action actually be required to amend the CEA to provide relief for that clause? Or I'm trying to understand how we can amend a document that's already been executed unilaterally, I guess, here.
Do I need to activate something here to?
We're not going to time you.
Great. No. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Pete Van Hemel from Bernstein Shur. So I don't know that I've done a workup on the process question that you're asking, which is, this sounds like it sort of contemplates inevitably that the CEA would be amended if this is done. But your observation superficially, again, I'm hearing this for the first time, so shooting from the hip, but I mean, that is a contract that requires, you know, whoever has signed that contract, I'm sure it cannot be amended unilaterally. That contract was signed a number of years ago. I don't remember the precise signature pattern on it. Credit enhancement agreements also, you know, this transaction has a sort of a light layer of state blessing with the Department of Economic Development in Maine or Augusta. So I'm sure there is an amendment protocol for those things, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. That shouldn't, I'll say this, that shouldn't be a barrier to it happening, right? That is knowable. I just don't know it.
The second question I think is for John and Tom, and that's the $25,000 payments. We're not specifying a funding source. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that precedent. I think we should. I don't know if there's a reserve account that, you know, could be used for this type of thing, or even a budget amendment. And then I don't think Nick's done his commitment yet, add it to the budget. I'm not comfortable taking that much out of fund balance because it's never going to get paid back. Unless you contemplate it when you're taking the action. So I guess the question is, where's it coming
Fair
from?
point. That's not been absolutely defined. I think there are a number of areas. We'd look to our school partners. They do have budget authorization that could assist in the interim to get to the next budget year. Possibly land fund funds could apply. I have not explored that. But I think your suggestion is probably the cleanest and most direct one, which would be a budget adjustment to provide resources sufficient to cover this cost.
And that could happen through a separate action or something.
Correct.
Okay.
And keep in mind, these do not start until December 1st, so there is time to act.
Okay.
So to John's point, we could arguably be presented with some options even and kind of decide as a council how to define that funding source.
Certainly, I may like to work with the finance committee if they're willing to spend some time on it to identify it.
Yeah, no, that helps.
But it's good to know that we have time.
Exactly.
And I-
That we're not
I
deciding
agree
that
with you.
today.
Yeah.
That piece, good.
Counselor
That's all I'm thinking of right
Yeah.
now.
Any other questions? And Counselor Seither, do you have any questions? Counselor Hamel, any questions?
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions. I'm wondering about, one is a process question. And it has to do with, as I understand it, we don't have an agreed, an agreement. We don't have an agreement, and so we're going to be approving potentially this evening a document that's not been agreed by the parties. So can you help me understand, how that works? And if, how, and when it would actually be decided based upon what's been explained so far?
So I would say the way that could work is, again, we could actually amend the item, the order number, to add language that expresses a certain date where both parties must sign, to try and create that clear deadline of, we need signature. At this point, again, like I said at the beginning, this really came down to pencils down. We need to make decisions and move forward. And so what's before us tonight is really our perspective on what essentially our best and final offer would be. And if the other party chooses that not to sign, then that's the choice that they could make. We would probably want to add a certain date that we would want them to sign so that we know what we need to do in terms of next steps for the school.
So I just have to confess that my experience, is limited, and it's mainly refers to labor agreements and other commercial agreements. But in situations like that, when I've been involved in the past, there's usually a deadline. There's a hard deadline, a date by which either there's an agreement or there isn't. I thought that we had some deadlines that had been established, one on Friday and one over the weekend. And then now I thought, this evening was one as well, but apparently not. So I just have to express my concern and my frustration. We haven't really heard any questions from the public yet on this. This is a single action item. It was scheduled this way. So, my preference would be for us to, try to hear a little bit from the public first before taking any action, and then seeing if there may be an interest in us considering treating this evening rather than a single action with no public hearing, that we add a step that would be next Wednesday, that, so this would just be a first reading only, and then a second reading and a public hearing and a vote on the 16th. So, but the second reading and a public hearing would be, next Wednesday.
You can motion when this is on the floor for something like that for consideration. Do you have any other questions specific to the option agreement for Pete, or?
I did have a question for you, John, in terms of your math, and this is looking at the 7.2 figure. We're kind of talking about what a delta would be, in terms of that. It does seem to me that we're not really making apples to apples comparisons. For example, we capture things like the share of infrastructure that the town would build. For example, 30% of the roads in the Downs, it's going to cost us $3 million. But we really don't put a value or a cost on the zoning that would be associated with this deal, where we create basically same size parcel with same zoning that, that they would have, and it would enable them to build many more units, in another place in the Downs. So I have to say, and I've participated not in all, but in many of the face-to-face discussions with the folks at the Downs, and I've got to give you guys credit. You know your numbers very well. You know the value of things. You have a grasp of your business that is impressive. If I were an investor, I'd think about investing with you, but I get a conflict of interest with that. But I would tell you that we are sort of at a disadvantage as a council and as a public entity in terms of our ability to put a value on that. So I think that though it looks like, it's a reasonable figure, I think it doesn't show the true cost and the true value that we would be imparting, to our, potential partners.
I'm struggling with what's your specific question?
So my
about-
question is, would we place the value on what we talk about the lost value, if we aren't able to take advantage of enhanced captured value in terms of taxes.
So again,
But we don't really talk in terms of what we're granting to the Downs potentially as a replacement for, you know, the land that we're
So I
considering
guess,
buying from them.
I guess to that question, the best thing we have at this point was the analysis that Sedco did back in April. That
Yeah.
was on this slide that really informs what is the do nothing scenario if we kept it zoned the same. And again, that assumes that they're, you know, building single family homes, which is what it's zoned to do today. Even if we contemplated, you know, changing just the TIF and the CEA to include that as VR4 and not change it to CPD, you can kind of see right there, there's some value change that would be created. So that's the incremental change of keeping the zoning the same, but actually changing the TIF and the CEA to cover that. And again, based on the scenarios that Karen ran, just based on her assumptions on, you know, potential development scenarios that the Downs could do under CPD zoning, this is the incremental growth. And again, these all cover in this analysis that she did, what that cost to serve would be, so that we can make sure not only are we looking at revenue, but we're also looking at cost. And so what's here is really the net benefit to the town. So doing nothing with this zoning, for changing the zoning, the town will operate at a loss. Doing what's contemplated in this deal, assuming the Downs does the type of development that Karen put out, there's more potential that we could actually, as a town, make incremental profit that could then be applied to different investments within our community.
I understand. I just think that our numbers in terms of what we've actually been able to use as of this date have been very small. You know, we're a little over $1 million, I think, that we can now use to offset debt and to use for other purposes like buying a piece of software for the public safety building. So I just think that we don't really have good apples to apples comparisons, and it's tough to make those comparisons anyway. But I think we tend to overvalue what we think we can gain by doing this and underestimate and don't have good numbers on things that include our impact fees and also our cost to serve. And we're not showing that anymore in these analysis.
I disagree. I think I just showed it. But question.
So
Counselor
I have
Tucci?
questions
Yeah.
again, sorry. And I don't know exactly who it's for, but the way I read the option agreement, it does call for amending the TIF district boundaries to include these new parcels. But it doesn't say anything about increasing the cap that's in the CA, and that's fine with everybody. They're giving up some land here, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that had been, it's a relevant point, I think, for
Yeah.
me.
And to be fully transparent, why this was put on the table at the very, very beginning of all of this was because I think, you know, according to both many people who have been here on the town and on the seller side, I don't think people fully contemplated a 25-acre need when the CEA was established. I think everybody, for whatever reason, assumed 5 to 10 acres, so that 25 is a lot. And in order to get the Downs to the table to really talk about what we needed, we felt like this was a good faith approach to say, we need more than we had originally contemplated. We think this is a good thing, not only for them, but for the town, right? Like at the end of the day, if you believe that, you know, the TIF and the CEA, which are key economic development tools designed for a specific reason to create tax shielding and benefit the community, you know, any zoning adjustment that allows for that, hopefully essentially does create new benefits for the town. So that's again, why we started that conversation very early with that as something that we were willing to put on the table to get the 25 acres that we needed.
So it gives them an opportunity to get the payout that they were
Yeah.
expecting
Exactly.
initially. That's
One
fine.
final question, John, if I may.
I
We
got
have-
one more, sorry.
Sorry.
The appraisal, I think I'm getting comfortable with all the extraordinary assumptions that are listed, with the exception of maybe one. And it relates to stormwater management and trip permitting. Says that the appraisal price assumes that those things are included with the sale price. And is that, I guess I know we made a change with stormwater kind of late in the game. I'm wondering,
Yeah.
are we actually, is that the case? And I don't know what the value of that is. But
So that was, I think that was a preliminary assumption when we were assuming the stormwater was part of the total acreage. And I think when we went back for the revised assumptions, it was before it was committed that the school would be able to do it themselves. I don't know, Pete, if you have real estate expertise in this area, that's more of an appraiser question to know how would it, if it's not being provided on the site, or on the site, but now that the school has absorbed it, would that have any significant impact on the appraisal amount?
Again, this is kind of a slightly idiosyncratic question. I don't know, right? The point of the appraisals would be, first, did everybody treat it the same way? Did everybody understand what that assumption meant? And does the number that you're seeing mask some other number that you're not seeing, right? Is that the cost of this inside the 7 million or whatever it's going to be, 7.2, or is there some other cost here that can be addressed outside of that as part of the school construction cost? I don't know. I don't know.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
With the stormwater, with the trips. Who's going to take care of the trip permitting, or is any additional going to be required? Is that defined, or
The
is it?
school is gonna be taking care, I think they're gonna be doing their own TNP on this and take care of that.
So we're going to take that.
And the option agreement does provide for us to be co-applicants if the need and opportunity presents itself. So that's contemplated, but from early on, the school stepped up and said, we'll be responsible for securing all of our traffic movement permits. Just, if I could, I want to respond to Council Hamill's, I think, first question. Just keep in mind, for your benefit and that of the full council, the authorization that you're considering granting me is not unlimited. It is in fact limited to an agreement substantially in the form that is in front of you this evening. So perhaps, hopefully that gives you some level of comfort that
Thank you. I did have,
Yep.
John, if I may, one other question. We have a credit enhancement policy. It's town council policy 103. It's in the section 100, the town council adopted policies and regulations under our financial policies. Will we be required, and have we, are we confident that the whatever CEA revisions are being proposed here as part of this deal will comply with our policies? Or can we negotiate exceptions to those?
council policy is just that. It's a guide that you've adopted or prior council has. Certainly it's relevant. I think we could actually run the analysis to be compliant with policy prior to you taking action in that regard. That's entirely possible.
I think with that policy, I need to look at it, but I think it always contemplated new CEAs, not adjustments to existing, so I don't know. So I don't know if the policy covers this in totality, but it's still maybe not a bad step to maybe ask finance committee to do that analysis.
Just sign us something.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah.
I think we signed you guys for something else too.
2018, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that motivated us.
Mhm.
I think was offered early by Peter Hayes and Betsy Fleistein.
Mhm.
So pretty dense.
Yep. So I want to go to Jean Marie. Jean Marie, do you have any questions? Or sorry, Councilor Hamel, did you have any other?
I'm good for now.
Councilor Katarina, any questions?
No, not at this time. Thanks.
All right. Councilor McGee, any questions?
I'm all set on questions right now. Thank you.
All right, so with questions done, I'm going to open it up for general public comment. So if anybody would like to get up and speak, if you could state your first and last name and address, and then you have 3 minutes to speak. If people want to line up, please feel free to line up.
I heard you.
Thank you.
My name's Jack Fay. I live at 14 Mulberry Lane here in Scarborough. My property abuts the back of Sawyer Road. I noticed that you said that the plan may involve a traffic light at Sawyer Road and Route 114 or Gorham Road. Why may? That's one of the most dangerous intersections we have in the city. Okay, I travel it every day. To the left, there's trees that I can't see. Ease out into the bicycle lane and kill a biker. Why not? You know, it's kind of ridiculous. Plus, I see on the plans, you're gonna try and widen that road, make a left turn lane 200 feet back and a right turn lane. It's not wide enough for 3 lanes. The people on either side are gonna lose a lot of property. You think that's gonna be easy? The other thing, I used to live on Williamsburg Lane, a private road. And I owned the road along with the other people. Has the people who live on track field, are they actually gonna be purchasing or selling their land? I haven't seen that yet. I've seen Crossroads is gonna take care of it. But are they actually gonna be forced to sell? Are you gonna create eminent domain? Or are you gonna buy the land? And then the other thing is, I bought my house for $318,000. If you guys want to buy it for 7.2 million, I'd be glad to talk to you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Skopaz. I live at 20 Old Colony Lane here in Scarborough. And I just wanted to say that to support this unified school project, because the more I've learned about it, the more I see the benefit and the value that the proposal has, and understand why that the Downs is a good location to place this new school. So I currently have a child at Pleasant Hill and one at Wentworth, and I love the small feel of the primary school. So my biggest concern with the unified school for the youngest grades was feeling lost in a big school and being farther away from where they live. But as I've reviewed the design plans and learned more about the intentional way that they've worked to create a small school feel by having the smaller learning communities within the school, which is very similar to Wentworth and all the benefits that that does have for those grades, the answer does seem clear to support this project. Now, in terms of the location, the Downs is central to the town and provides, very importantly, the school population room to grow as needed, which is one of the major things that we're dealing with right now. So the process that the district went through to find a site that fits all the required needs and provides travel equity and supports families like ours with multiple kids at different schools with its proximity to the municipal campus was detailed and comprehensive. So I do support like this as a good location for us to consider for the school. So kind of in summary, the unified school does seem to be the best choice for our students as a long-term investment, financially and for our schools, because the other option is a short-term triage solution, which is what we would need to resort to if it doesn't go to ballot and approved by voters in November. So I do encourage the town and the Downs to work together on this important land deal to allow this project to move forward so we can support Scarborough's high-quality education now and into the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Sue Hamill, and I live on Bay Street in Pine Point. I'm only focused tonight on the land. This is a bad deal for the town. The deal shows what happens when you put inexperienced negotiators who are spending someone else's money up against a team of tough, seasoned, and highly experienced negotiators who are spending their own money. The first rule of negotiations is you must be prepared to walk away. And you must decide ahead of time what your walk away point is. Our team was desperate for this land and basically told the Downs that we were never going to walk away from this land. And with that, we pretty much told them, we got our checkbook out, just fill in the amount. I know my comments will fall on deaf ears tonight. There are at least 4 counselors who will vote yes, no matter what. The voters will at least have their say in November. There are so many issues with the land deal, too many to give in detail, but I'll list a few. Special fast track treatment for zoning changes and growth permits. Expanding the CEA beyond the 80 million we are already on the hook to pay them. The town is to pay a share of the infrastructure costs over and above the 80 million we're already paying, even though the primary access to the school will not be through the Downs. And the school is required to have a primary access point off Sawyer Road through Trackview Terrace. This land deal has a lot of unresolved issues with the roadway connection to Sawyer. It will change that long-established neighborhood. And we do not yet have solid information on the total cost of buying up homes and yards to create a safer Sawyer Road, which the increase in traffic will require. Finally, I want to say something about the option agreement that the option agreement highlighted for me. The Downs is claimed to be our partner, the local boys, and the town seemed to buy that when we created the TIF and the CEA. But it turns out we really don't know who exactly the partners are. It now appears that at least one, if not more, of these partners are not even Maine residents, based on the big deal they made in the document about confidentiality of certain tax forms. The land deal is just one more reason I'll be voting no in November. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Megan Condry, and this is my husband, Zach Lambert. We live at 2 Trackview Terrace, and we are requesting to combine our 3 minutes of speaking time. I am here this evening to bring my family's concerns with the land option agreement to the attention of the public and to the town council. I want to be clear that we support the construction of a new primary school. There's a demonstrated need for a school that can house a growing population of young students. We even support the identified location at the Downs, which already has 3 existing points of entry via major roadways. We care deeply about this issue since this is where we purchased our first and forever home, where we had our son, and where we plan to raise our family. Our concern is that the land agreement between the Downs and the town of Scarborough hinges on adding an entry point via Sawyer Road and Trackview Terrace. However, Trackview Terrace, where we live, is a privately owned dead-end street, and we were not part of any of these negotiations. Page 9 of the purchase option agreement, section D on access, states that the buyer, the town of Scarborough, shall not be permitted to exercise the option or close on the transaction contemplated by this agreement in the event that a public road between the premises and Sawyer Road cannot or will not be constructed via Trackview Terrace or an alternate route planned. If Trackview is so pivotal, why have we not been included in any of these negotiations? Not only is Trackview Terrace a private road, our property line includes the Trackview Terrace roadway where it meets with Sawyer Road. To travel down Trackview Terrace from Sawyer Road, you must cross our private property. Just last summer, the sale of our neighbor's house depended on my husband and I signing an easement to the new owner so that they may travel over our property to get to their home. I would encourage you to type in 2 Trackview Terrace into the town GIS website and zoom in to see for yourself. The agreement also states on page 9 that the buyer, the town of Scarborough, shall be responsible for taking reasonable efforts to plan and procure access to the premises to and from Sawyer Road via Trackview Terrace, which the buyer agrees will be at all times now and in the future the primary access to its project, the school. This language is concerning for 2 reasons. First, the word procure recognizes that even after the land deal with the Downs, there is still more land to procure. In fact, on page 11, it states that the buyer shall be solely responsible for all costs associated with necessary improvements to Trackview Terrace and additional land acquisition required to complete the access. We believe that at least some of that land is ours, and we have not been included in any deliberations as part of this agreement. I would also like to point out that it would be wholly unethical for the town to enter a multi-million-dollar land deal with a large development company while holding in their back pocket, as all governments do, the ability to take my family's land by eminent domain for mere pennies to complete this deal and project. The value of Trackview Terrace land cannot be understated if the entire deal hinges on its acquisition. Secondly, this language stresses that all new school traffic be routed at all times now and in the future through our currently private street, not through the Downs. One needs only to witness the line of idling cars down 114 at school drop-off time to understand why this is included in the deal. This language also neglects to recognize the obvious increased traffic that would be generated from the Downs via our road that's not school related. The Down Zone website states that it is a 524-acre mixed-use community located in the heart of Scarborough with an enviable array of living options set in natural surroundings with a vibrant town center and a truly integrated innovation district. Surely we can expect increased traffic to such a dynamic new development. They also advertise being a town center, but do not want school traffic going through their streets, which I just find laughable. Furthermore, map renderings of the Downs development has included Trackview Terrace long before a land agreement was written this past week. Access to Sawyer Road and Route 114 has been on the developer's agenda since the start, and a school provides the perfect guise for obtaining it cheaply. I sincerely hope these concerns are considered prior to each councilor's vote tonight. And I say this while recognizing there is a real need for a new school and the time crunch is real to get this on the November ballot. However, my husband and I purchased a home on a quiet, private, dead-end street with plans to raise a family. Now that we have a 1-year-old son, our resolve to keep traffic down and to not live in the middle of a construction site for the next 5 years is stronger than ever. We believe these proposed plans involve our property, and since we have not been included in any discussions up to this point, we can only assume where we fall in level of importance compared to the Downs developers. In our view, we are at least equally important to the Downs in this business transaction, since land must be acquired from both of us for this project to work. We also believe that we have more at stake than the developers, since this is not just land for us, it is also our home. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Dave Rabideau, 10 Bickford Street, Scarborough. That was awesome. That was really good. I'm not prepared, as usual. I'm in complete sticker shock. I'm sorry. I haven't been following it closely enough, but I think people become desensitized to costs, whether you're looking at buying a house or you're looking at buying a new car, you see the first cost and you go, wow, that's ridiculous. But in time, it becomes kind of the norm. And I think that's where we are. The land cost for this project is just insane. I thought the 5.8 was pretty high. The 7.2 is terrible. So just like you to consider that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Richard Hayes, Martin Avenue. I've expressed a couple of times my concern over decisions made quickly aren't always good. And I think we're there. This lady and her husband have a ton of legitimate questions that I hope you people are prepared to give them some answers. What is proposed doing to them just isn't right. If you're going to take their land by eminent domain, they need to be told that. I've made the statement that we all understand the need. I question the process. The last time I made that statement, the council chair beleaguered my statement. I believe that we're moving faster than should be. My last question is, how does the person working for the town go from a 5.8 appraisal to 7.5 million? What happened to the 21 acres that it all of a sudden increased almost $2 million in value and then settled back at $1.5 million over his original estimate? Those questions need to be answered also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Pritchard, Maple Avenue. I've got a lot of questions about the land that we're looking at buying. Knowing the area. In the appraisal, were there test borings done? If so, how deep is the water line? What's the material? Are we going to have to preload that land? That's going to be an extra cost. We're gonna have to drive piling to Ledstone. What's that cost? Are those costs already included in the 144 million? If so, how do we estimate that cost if it was included? Because I'm hearing all kinds of numbers. Now we're at 144 million. It's been up as high as 200 million. We, the public, the ones that's going to be paying the bill, really don't know what you guys are doing. And from what I'm hearing tonight, I don't think you really know what you're doing. You're gonna pass an order to authorize the manager to sign an agreement that the two sides don't agree on. How do we know the people that are paying the bills know what's in that agreement? I feel this issue should be tabled until both sides agree and that agreement is brought back before the public. I know I've talked to some of you people and you say you don't represent the taxpayers, you represent the town. Who's the town? Is the manager of the town? Are you 7 people the town? The town are us, the ones that pay the bills. I think it's time we take the shutters off this whole project and lay the numbers out so everybody knows what they're voting on, rather than 14 people. The 7 people here and the 7 people on the Board of Education. You're asking us to buy a pig in a poke. It's time to slow this process down so we all know what we're going to be voting on and what we're buying. Access to the Sawyer Road. I was in this chamber the night that the council assured the public that the Downs would not have access to Sawyer Road. How are you going to explain backing up on that issue? Because we're building a school? Was that land suggested by the Downs just so that they would have access to Sawyer Road? And if the Downs are going to have access to Sawyer Road, I want more. Why are the taxpayers paying for a bond that the Downs going to use? Why aren't they rebuilding it? I know your minds are made up, this is going to pass, but I was strongly urged that this issue be tabled. Tabled until such time that you can present true, accurate information to the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Shannon Lindstrom, 62 Jasper Street. The vote in front of you tonight is a big one, and I know this. I know we're asking a lot of you. It's time bound. This is what helps us get our K-8 strategic school solution moving forward in our primary school build. I recognize the magnitude of this, and I recognize what we're asking you to do tonight. And I would not be standing in front of you advocating for this if I didn't believe in my whole heart that this is what we need to do. This project has not been fast moving. This project is 10 years in the making. That's 10 years of research. That's 10 years of long-term analysis. That's 10 years of expert consultation and insight that has come together to make this solution. This plan represents the best investment educationally and financially for the Scarborough community. Likewise, the site selection process that has led to the down site has been no small task. The building steering committee was very, very intentional about building a process that pulled in insight and perspective from across the community. This was during many, many interactive community forums
And that combined the subject matter experts and our local leaders and our community members. Over 30 meetings. We held over 30 meetings between February of 2022 and April of 2023. This is with all of the different stakeholders in the community to evaluate sites. There was no foregone conclusion. We didn't sit at the table with an answer in front of us and try to make our way to that solution. We actually understood and evaluated each site and tried to understand how it would fit into the long-term goals of our project. We had 11 selection criteria. These included safety, environment, capacity for future expansion, soil and topography, utilities, transportation, safety, traffic studies, public service, availability, and costs. So it was not foregone. There was not a foregone conclusion. We had 46 potential sites we looked at. And after extensive evaluation, it became necessary to evaluate based on what met our criteria and what best aligned with our priorities. And those priorities, by the way, not just for our committee, but also for the Scarborough community. That is how we got to the Downs. The Downs is a central location that ensures there is equity in travel time to the school from anywhere in Scarborough. Its close proximity to the municipal campus keeps Scarborough's entire student population centrally located and better accommodates our families with students at multiple schools. The area that we selected provides enough room for future expansion should we need it, and if our town continues to grow. This is a solution that can grow with Scarborough for 50+ years. It is not similar to the situation we are currently in where we have no more room to grow. I've talked to you about this numerous times. You know, we're out of space and we have nowhere left to put our kids that are coming. We are very excited to be able to build this new home for our K-3 population in the central hub of our growing town. It is the right location. Our students, our future members and leaders of the community are looking to us right now, the 14 of us and those of our community, our partners, to get this project to where it is, to pass this land deal today and to get to our referendum in the August 16th vote. So I'm asking you to please vote yes today, to please help us and work with us to continue this process further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kathy Terrell. I live at 348 Broad Turn Road. I'm a community member and I'm principal of Scarborough Middle School. So I'm speaking in support of the council authorizing the land deal to move the school project forward. The new K-3 building is crucial to alleviate the overcrowding in our K-2 schools and the middle school. And the Downs site was ultimately chosen from a list of 46 potential sites because it met all of the criteria and best aligned with the priorities consistently named by the Scarborough community for the new school project. So please move this forward. Thank you.
Let me just quickly see if there's anybody online who would like to offer public comment. If you raise your hand, we'll get to you next. Sir.
Sure. My name's Neil Gregoire. I live on King Street in Scarborough. Through the chair, I'd like to ask the town attorney a question. And it's Mr. Van Hemel. Van Hemel. Nice. I was an old friend of Paul Frinskos. If you were representing the town of Scarborough, okay, and a party that was going to enter into a negotiation with the town of Scarborough came to you and said, I want you to represent me in this negotiation, would Bernstein Shore let that happen? It's yes or no. It's yes or no.
If the council wants to let me speak,
I asked for the opportunity to speak to the council through the
Point of
chair.
order, Mr. Chair, could you please have public comment directed to the council?
Okay. I asked for permission to address the attorney through the chair. I'll answer the question for him. His firm would not let him represent another party in negotiations with a party they already represent. His firm would not let another partner in that firm represent the party in a negotiation with their client, okay? Yet somehow we don't see that there's a conflict of interest when our building committee uses the consultant for the Downs in their site selection process. That doesn't strike anybody as being a conflict of interest? Any of you? I asked the attorney, but I don't have the, I guess, the opportunity to talk to him. It's an absolute conflict of interest. And I understand him not wanting to put his relationship with you guys on the line and answer that question. But I happen to be a client of Bernstein Shore. I know what I went through to make sure that there was no conflict before I entered into a relatively simple transaction with them. They would no way allow that. And yet we let, and I'm assuming that the building committee didn't come and ask the town attorney, is it a conflict if we use the Downs consultant to help us in our site selection process? If you don't all sit there and nod your head that this is a conflict, I mean, I don't know what the hell to think. I really don't. Okay. Just out of curiosity, what was the Downs appraisal for the property in question? Answer? You don't know?
That's not something that we can discuss. That's
Why is that?
client attorney privilege.
Why is that client attorney privilege? Whose attorney? I think what we'll find is that probably you guys got out negotiated. They had you over a barrel. They knew they had you over a barrel. I think if you gave them a few drinks and got them loosened up, they'd laugh all the way to the bank that they had you over a barrel because you were babes in the woods. Okay, this whole process stinks. It was a predetermined outcome in the selection.
Sir, your time is up if you could.
Hey,
wrap up
we
your
have had
comments,
more
please.
people take more time than I've taken. Okay,
Sir, these are the rules and I'm enforcing them as chair. I have the authority to do that, so I'm going to ask you to please.
yeah,
wrap
you
up.
have the authority, to let other people speak as long as they want, but when all of a sudden it starts to question the whole process.
Sir, but I would also state that you're also not following the proper rules of conduct that we have listed in terms of public comment.
Okay,
So.
well,
I'm
what
gonna
would
give
that
you-
be?
All right, I'm going to call a quick recess and then we will come back.
That's right.
and
Take
continue
your
public
marbles,
comment.
take your marbles and go home.
5 minutes. there's anyone online, if you could raise your hand. I see Abigail Henry. Do I have to do that? Are we good? Abigail, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, I'm Abigail Henry. I live at 8 Long Meadow Road. I am the parent of a rising kindergartner and a rising third grader and the spouse of a public school teacher from another district. I'm here to provide enthusiastic support for town council to authorize our town manager to move forward with the proposed land acquisition related to the new school site. This is an idea whose time has come. Scarborough School leadership for years has been diligently vetting solutions with experts related to enrollment management, educational best practices, design and architecture, environmental impact, financial modeling, and collaborating with our very own community to determine that this new unified K-3 school project is the most prudent option. They have my trust and complete support. Withholding authorization tonight will not make this increasingly urgent problem go away. In fact, delaying progress means wasteful repetition of the past year's processes, additional costs, and soaring expenses related to inflation. What gets me the most is the thought of kids showing up to school without dedicated, intentional space to learn. This is a scenario that's completely at odds with our community's values and our hopes for the future. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to offer public comment? All right,
I didn't use all 3 minutes.
I will
say one thing.
I will allow it.
Jack Fay, Williamsburg Lane, or I'm sorry, Mulberry Lane. I've been listening to some very good things. I agree that we want to try and centralize the students and whatnot. Taking away the neighborhood schools is going to have a certain effect, though. If I'm not mistaken, the town of Scarborough is having a shortage of school bus drivers. And that's going to extend how many hours students are going to have to spend waiting to get to school and waiting to get home. And I don't know what steps are going to be taken to correct that. If you have to drive down to Blue Point area to pick up kids and bring them back here, or if you have to go down Pleasant Hill, I lived over there, that's not that far. But it's going to be very, very difficult. What steps are they going to take to get more school bus drivers? That's a big shortage right now.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody else in the public who would like to comment on this item? No? So I would like to try and address, oh, one online. All right. Joanna Wallace, if you unmute yourself, you should be able to speak.
All right, is everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Joanna Wallace. I live on Burnham Wood Circle. And I'd like to express my disapproval for the purchase of the land by the town for the new school project. My objection is based on a couple factors. The first is that the cost estimates for the entire project continue to increase, with numerous loose ends remaining to be clarified. Things like the utility work, road improvements, etc., will only increase the total cost of this land purchase. The second is the proposed project site is central to other municipal buildings. However, the location will permanently damage the neighborhood surrounding Sawyer Road. Generally, the buildings of this magnitude are not permitted on tertiary roads for this reason. Imagine Costco or Walmart being permitted to build their store on a road like Sawyer. The town has other options that have the school sited in a manner that connects it to primary roads and minimize impact. I do want to note that I don't live near the proposed school, and I feel for those who will have their homes impacted and turned upside down by the increased traffic. I also would encourage the town to heed the recommendations of the 2016 enrollment study that the school board commissioned. The recommendation from that report was to modestly build additions and modernize the existing primary schools. Not only did that provide a significant cost savings, but there would be no new infrastructure impacting the existing neighborhoods. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. With that, I am closing public comment. Unless there's anybody else who wants to speak, I do want to try and address some of the feedback that we got. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Priscilla Mashvecchio, and I'm 19 Juneberry Lane. I have no disagreement to having the centralized school in the Downs. However, I think the access road should come from Hagus because it's a bigger road. It would not disturb any of the private homes that you're talking about. The second thing is we gave the Downs a 10-year tax break, and I think we should be able to negotiate price. I think it's overpriced and it just keeps escalating. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last call. Any public comment on the phone or in the room? No? Okay. So I'm gonna circle back to some of the questions that we got just to be able to respond to the public. And again, if any counselor wants to add anything or has any other information you want to share, please feel free to do so. So first and foremost, like I totally hear the residents, especially those on Sawyer Road and on Trackview Terrace, that we have not done a good job communicating and engaging with you guys. And I think you will own that there's more that we could be doing to communicate and involve you in the process. I will say, as it relates to Sawyer Road, the improvements that this will bring to that roadway is desperately needed. Like they were needed before this project, and this hopefully helps to expedite the need for some of those improvements. As was pointed out, it's a high crash intersection at Gorham Road and Sawyer. So we really do need a traffic light there, like full stop. We need it today. We need it before this project. This really just will kind of prioritize that and make sure that happens compared to other town projects. Unfortunately, given the and this is just my opinion, the nature of the school and the magnitude of it, no matter where we put it, there's going to be impact to the surrounding residents, the surrounding neighbors. So I don't think we would be in a different situation, in a different site where we would have people around there who aren't pleased with the impact that something like this would bring to their neighborhood. And I think that access point to Sawyer is really critical for the school to be able to operate well. There is going to be alternative access through other parts of the Downs, but this is really the best path, at least in terms of, and then again, this is coming from being on the school building committee as a liaison, being able to, move that traffic away from Route 1 to really bring it through Sawyer to get to the school is a really great opportunity to alleviate traffic across all of Scarborough. So again, it's not a decision I think any of us are taking lightly. I think we understand and sympathize with the impact it's going to have to the immediate residents. But again, the problem we're trying to solve is we need a site for the school, and we need to be able to get buses to that school. And this deal at least contemplates a pathway to do that. I will ask the town manager that we do make it a priority to engage the Trackview residents, not just the ones that spoke tonight, but all of the other Trackview residents, to make sure that they're involved in the conversation, and that if this does pass, we also have a action plan to do more communication with all residents on Sawyer Road. Let's see. So just there were a couple of comments related to the process and the experience, and what I hope the public knows is that this was 8 months in the making. This wasn't something that happened quickly. Both myself, my experiences working on big government-wide contracts. Councilor Hamel was at the table, who has a lot of experience negotiating contracts and has also a lot of labor contracts. We had our attorney who does this as for his job. So I hope people feel confident that we were at the negotiating table very much with the right qualifications to try and get the best outcome for this community. There were, there's a lot of feelings, I think, about this deal. And I think it honestly has less to do with the land for some people and more to do with the partner that we're engaging with. And I ask that people also kind of take a moment to think about their own personal transactions when you're buying a house. It's usually there's a seller and a buyer, and you have to find a compromise in order to come to a solution. The perception that the Downs owes us something, it would be great if they would give us a gift. We've asked for it multiple times. But at the end of the day, this is a land transaction between a seller and a buyer, and we're trying to find that compromise that gets us to a deal that both parties can live with. And even as was shared, we're still not really there. But again, at this point, I think what we've put forward is, at least from the negotiating team's perspective, the best deal for this council to act on tonight. So for the question about the 7.5 million and how we got there with the appraisal. So again, essentially in the appraisal process, we provided guidance and assumptions to both appraisers to help create their appraisal. In our first round appraisal, our appraiser really looked at comparables that were more related to industrial and retail land use, when the guidance was to focus on housing. And so when our appraiser went back, adjusted his assumptions, that's how he came back to the 7.5 million. And again, it was really looking at a very different method. So he did one method first, then he did a second method. And then the final was a blend of the two, where he gave us his best recommendation at 7 million. So that's, appraisals are not pure science. There's some art and a lot of assumptions that these people have to get certified. So we have to trust that the work that our appraiser did is legitimate and done appropriately and represents, what we paid him to tell us is the good fair market value for the price of the land. Let's see. So there's some questions about the numbers, where the numbers, I would encourage anybody who has questions about numbers related to the school that they watch the school building committee meetings or attend a school building committee meeting. There's been a lot of meetings lately that are out there for the public to watch, where they talk about the numbers and really break them down, including things around Sawyer Road. The question about conflict of interest. So this was something that the committee did address early on in the process before the site was selected. It was actually brought forward by members of the committee, and it was debated by the committee, and the committee ultimately agreed that through executive session that there was no conflict of interest. I will say, not one individual provided the recommendation for this. It was a team effort of many people, where clearly there was an individual that I know some people have concerns about, but there were experts at the table. There were people dedicated to this. It was data driven. It was based on criteria that was clearly provided and outlined. So, it was ultimately up to the committee and the members of the committee to determine what the site was. And the committee chose this as the premium site based on all the data that they received. There was a question about traffic analysis for the busing, I believe. And again, this was discussed at the last school building committee to show that moving the schools and having them come to the new site, given the existing resources, would have minimal impact to bus rides and things like that. So the work has been done there to really look into that. Again, there's a lot of perceptions around tax breaks and the Downs getting a deal. The real situation is, as part of the economic development tools that the town has to drive value creation for the community, the town engaged in a credit enhancement agreement with the Downs, with the intent of letting them take on the risk of infrastructure to fund the investment. And so the money that they're getting is performance-based. They have performance criteria they have to meet. And when they meet those performance criteria, the town will give them 40% of the new value that they've created back in taxes to make up for the risk that they're taking on in building the infrastructure, to support the economic development of that community that does bring significant value with the TIF and tax shielding that we get as a community. Again, I think that, the question often comes up, well, if we owe them, if we're giving them tax break, why are we paying for infrastructure? And again, the point there is this project is unique and has unique needs. And you know, that means we need to pay to support those and prioritize those and make sure they get done for what's needed for a school to operate. That wasn't necessarily contemplated in the road designs that the developer was planning to do. And so, you know, one comment was made about how this is giving them more money and or for the CEA or expanding their CEA cap, and it's not. There, you know, any changes to this aren't contemplating changing how much more the developer gets. It's, you know, what's in the CEA is what's in the CEA, and it's up to them to perform in order to get their performance payment from the town. So those were some of the things I captured that I felt were worth responding to. I don't know if there's anything else the town manager or anyone else on the council wants to respond to.
One response that might be helpful, there were a number of questions from one speaker relative to the conditions of the site. There has been preliminary geotechnical work done. That information has been received and has been considered by the design team. And I believe that there are proper budget allowances, given what we know. Beyond that, this option agreement does give us a further due diligence period, taking us into next March. And so I assure you, additional work, not unlike what we do if we were buying a home, frankly, to fully understand what we're buying and in what condition.
All right, so with that, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Jean Marie, do you want to kick us off? Any comments?
So what are we moving?
Oh, sorry. I didn't say it. So starting over.
Yeah,
I got off track by trying to respond to
That's
some
okay.
comments. So moving on to order number 23-086, act on the request to authorize the town manager to sign an option agreement to purchase property located in the Downs for the new school substantially in the form attached here too. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right, discussion.
Mr.
All right.
Chair,
Councilor Katarina?
yes. So I know there've been some numbers bandied about with this. Did you want to talk about the numbers? Or do you want me to just speak generally to it?
You can speak generally.
Okay. As people know, I've you know, had some questions about this whole process with school and, you know, what's it going to look like and whatever, but over time, I've come to this basic feeling that if we don't do something now, when are we going to do it? My daughter graduated in, God, I gotta remember, 2009. From the Scarborough schools. And at that time there was overcrowding and there were the modulars and whatever in the schools. And there was the big brouhaha over the Wentworth School, which eventually, you know, the reason that got built was because they finally basically condemned the old Wentworth School. And I hate to see us, you know, could get to the point where, you know, the schools are just so down and out and can't fit the kids and aren't meeting our educational needs, that, you know, we're actually going to look foolish as a town, to be frank about it. I know there've been a couple numbers bandied about. One was what, a 7.2 million. Other one was 7 point, was it 7? I don't have it. I should have it right in front of me, but I'm operating off from 4 different things right now, an iPad and a phone and whatnot. But that being said, there was a difference of about $500,000 between what supposedly the Downs folks said, oh yeah, we could accept that. And then some of the feeling that was like my initial feeling too was, you know, the lower number we should go with. And, you know, I could go with either one of those, but I will tell you right now that I am going to support us authorizing the manager to do something tonight to get land, because without the land, you can't move forward with a referendum. And I would remind the owners of Crossroads Holdings that they have the opportunity to do the right thing here and continue helping us move forward with this the time and the opportunity to do something to correct our deficiencies in our schools. So that's where I'm at right now, Mr. Chair.
Alright. Mr. Hamel?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I had asked earlier and was interested in potentially offering an amendment to this action item, this single action. So I'd just like to know when would be the appropriate time for this, given council procedure.
You may offer any amendment motion at any point in our debate.
So may I do that at this time then? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to offer a motion to amend the single action item this evening. It is currently drafted. It would authorize the town manager to sign an option agreement. It's a 10 to 15 page, single spaced, very complex document to purchase property to locate in the Downs, substantially in the form of what was attached to the agenda. What I'd like to offer, instead of having this be a first reading and vote, there's only a single reading and a vote, I would like to propose that we add an additional step that would be that this would be a first reading only this evening with no action, and that would be followed by a second reading and public hearing and vote on next Wednesday. And this would still lead us in the direction of making a final decision on August 16th. Right, reason
Can I
for
get it?
okay.
Before we get into your reason, can we get a second?
Hold on, I would just like some clarification on the date for the Wednesday that you're referring to, Don. Are you proposing that we meet again next Wednesday?
Yes. Yes.
The 9th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you.
Second it.
All right, discussion on the motion to amend?
Mr. Chair,
Counselor Katerina?
I do not support that at all. I think it's in an effort to delay and obfuscate a long road that we've been on in order to come to this point. I will remind folks that what we're doing tonight is we are voting to authorize, excuse me, the manager to sign an agreement with the Downs to purchase land. And that's all we're doing. And the voters have the ultimate right at the end of the day to vote on whether or not everything we're talking about is going to pass or not in a referendum. We need to move forward on this. I think any other delay is ridiculous. As I said before, you guys have heard me say this. You know, we've had all sorts of homework. We've had all sorts of assignments. We've got something to do. Do it tonight, get it done. Your paper was due today. Don't tell me the dog ate it.
All right, Counselor Seiler?
Oh, hard to follow up that one-liner. I will say that Chairman Anderson is detailed, if nothing else, and he has provided us with a timeline months, weeks ago, outlining the process that we were going to take. Many of us planned our vacations and time with our families around this important work, myself included. And I am not available Wednesday, August 9th. So take that into consideration for what it's worth.
I didn't know that. I would want to make sure that everybody could be there. I actually, this has been in the works for a long time, but the fact is I got the document on Friday and there's a lot in there and I try to understand what I'm voting on. So I think I'm there. I'm prepared to act today, but I also have no reservations about having another meeting next Wednesday or Tuesday if decided, or even bumping it the next week. I guess I'm supportive of that notion. But also prepared to act today.
Counselor Shoup?
Yeah, I do not support delaying. I think we need to move forward. I think we're in a crisis. This is a real estate deal and we are ready to move forward. I am as well.
All right. Counselor McGee?
I don't have a problem adding another meeting in between. Doesn't push back the ultimate deadline. So if we need another public hearing and meeting for people to absorb it, I don't have a problem with it.
Mr. Chair, if I could add, I'm sorry.
Katerina?
I am not available next Wednesday either. I've got family in town from Australia. And as everyone can see, I'm on vacation now. I'm supposed to be on vacation. But next week, there's no way I can't make it, but I wasn't gonna say that was gonna be one of my reasons. I just think we're prepared. We need to move now. Thanks.
Right. I think I'm in the mindset of, I don't know if giving more time at this point for myself will change the outcome for me, or maybe even change the outcome for many of us tonight. So I'm not necessarily in favor of it, but let's see. Kristen, would you mind calling the vote?
May I have one more comment to respond to the points that were made since I made the motion?
Yes.
Thank you. You're a kind and generous man, patient man too, I must
Yeah.
add. We put a lot of time and effort into this, everyone. This has been painful. You know, they say they're like top 3 things that are the most stress inducer things in your life, you know, getting married and you know, changing a job and buying a house. But I can tell you that negotiating a deal like this is right up there. It really is. And so I understand the need and the desire for the council to take action. My difficulty with it is twofold. One, this document is complicated. There are terms in there that still don't make sense to me. We got it really late. Number 2, we've missed 2 deadlines now. This is, you know, 3rd deadline. We still don't have an agreement based upon the document that's there. Number 3, the issue that we're saying that this is a simple matter of just authorizing the town manager to, you know, to negotiate or to effectuate a purchase option agreement is a gross overstatement, okay, of simplicity. This is by no means a simple thing. And I think most of all, we've made great efforts to try to engage and involve the public. Now, a lot of this has taken place through Board of Ed activities, which I would say for the most part were driven by their building committee and also their subcommittee for finance. Most of those things were attended by Board of Ed staff. They were not very well attended by the public. And I would say most, even other than a handful of close followers, most folks in the public are seeing this for the first time and are still trying to catch their breath. So that's my reason for offering the motion. And I want to thank my fellow counselors for their comments and their good work, and to Mr. Anderson, our chair, who really has worked very diligently along with the Board of Ed and us to move this to this point. But I think we need more time. It does not delay anything. You know, we're still going to take the final action on this on August 16th. So there's really no delay here. It's another chance for the public to hear it and for them to be prepared to ask, you know, more informed questions.
Councilor McGee?
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question on the motion, and maybe Tony, you can clarify? Is the motion specific to next Wednesday or just a future date?
Let's say, if I understood correctly, you wanted a public hearing at that point?
I would like to request that we schedule a date, and I didn't bother to ask everybody to bring their date books with them and to do the scheduling as well. But I would try to pick a time where we can get most of us available. We've had, I would prefer to have everybody there as well, number 1. Number 2, we've had other meetings, we've had executive sessions recently that have not included everyone. So, and I know we make great accommodations for people during the summer. It's supposed to be only 1 meeting a month. That's not the world we're living in. So, I would be open to whatever time is going to make sense between now and the 16th that would accommodate. But I did not include I did not plan to include the scheduling as part of my motion.
The only thing, if you'd want a public hearing for next week, we wouldn't be able to have it because you have to have a 7-day notice in the newspaper for a public hearing.
Well, you know, I think we have other notice requirements that we've been blowing left and right, okay, including providing packages for this meeting. We added documents 2 days ago. I added a letter, the initial thing that started this, the letter of intent that we approved, and it authorized Tom to begin negotiations with the Downs. We've added other information as well at the very last minute. So if we do that, I would like to see if there's a way for us to not follow the public notice requirement by creating an opportunity for the public to participate. That seems to me like a really bad time to start invoking practices that we've not been following ourselves consistently recently.
To move the motion forward, Counselor Hamel, is there a motion to amend you would like to propose, or?
I'd like to amend the motion so that we could pick a date between now and August 16th that would provide us to have, that it would not be an action item this evening, that we would provide a day for us to have a second reading and vote and public hearing that day before August 16th.
You would have to, you can't amend an amendment. You have to take care of the amendment that's on the floor or withdraw it.
So I did not know when I made the amendment that I had to schedule everybody for it.
Let's vote on the original motion that was put forward. So Kristen, can you please call the vote?
Yep. Counselor Seider,
Please, can you restate the original motion, please, just so we're clear?
Well, from what I could gather, the motion was to amend the main motion in order to add additional public comments, not to take action this evening, but to have a public hearing and a second reading.
Thank you.
On August 9th.
On August 9th, that's correct.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yep.
So on August 9th, you're gonna take the vote that we should be taking tonight or not? Yes or no?
That would be the intent. It would be a second, it would be a second reading and vote and public hearing. that
Okay,
night.
because that's not what Tody just said, so
Sorry.
that's why I wondered.
Your comment, if I understood correctly, was that you did not want to vote tonight,
Correct.
but you wanted to hold a public hearing and a second reading.
Yes, prior to taking action.
Correct, which is August 9th.
Yes.
Okay, so Kristen, can you please call the vote?
Counselor Seider,
No?
Counselor Clucci,
No.
Counselor Shoup,
No.
Counselor Katerina,
No.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor McGee,
No.
Chairman Anderson,
No.
motion fails.
All right. So back to the main motion. Is there any, Counselor Clucci?
So I was hoping to take care of housekeeping before I get into discussion, but we had, I guess everybody could know now that we don't have an agreement in front of us. We're authorizing the town manager to sign something. We seem to be of the opinion that putting a date certain for that authorization would make sense. So I'd like to amend the main motion to, instead of say authorize the town manager to sign an option agreement to purchase property, it would say authorize the town manager to countersign an option agreement on or before August 9th, 2023. And then the remainder would stay the same.
Second?
All right, discussion,
I had a question.
Counselor Hamel?
So, how does that work if we do not have an agreement this evening?
It creates a time window. So they have a week to have both signatures on.
So we would
document.
have to obtain an agreement by the 9th,
Well, this is the agreement.
right?
He has a week to get a signature from the Downs and himself.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's not into perpetuity.
But
So
that
the
would be a-
authorization is time bound.
So that would be a real deadline that would expire
It
at
is.
12:01 on that date.
You are
Yes.
correct. That's the
Thank you.
intent.
Just thought I'd try to be precise. It's not like me to do that, but
All right, any other discussion on this item? On this amendment? All right, Kristen, do you mind calling the vote?
Counselor Seider,
Yes.
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Shoup. Yes. Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
no.
Counselor McGee,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, Counselor Clucci?
I have one more that I kind of caught me off guard. There's a clause under section F zoning adjustments that calls for zoning adjustments and ordinance amendments contemplated in this subsection shall also include the addition of restaurants with no drive-through service other than coffee shops or coffee kiosks, for which drive-through shall not be restricted other than by standard permit requirements as a permitted use in the CPD district. I'd like to motion to strike that sentence, that final sentence of section
Second.
8F.
Second, all right, any discussion?
Just for the public and for, our own discussion, I'm not in favor of this language being part of this agreement, but mainly because I just think it should be taken up as its own issue. I don't really see how it fits into the school land discussion. And so I am in favor of striking it from this contract language or agreement language, but not because I don't want to have the discussion about it in the future. I just don't think it fits right here. Are you voting on something that the public has not seen?
This should be in the packet.
I pulled it out online, so this is part of the packet.
And at what time today?
I opened it earlier today. I honestly don't know when it was put in there.
8:30. So again, the history with this particular item, I mentioned it in the presentation. This was one of those items that came forward. Again, it may have been discussed early on, but it wasn't raising to our attention. And then when we got the final language, it was included, and we had originally struck it completely from the packet with the intent to add it. There was still some discussion on whether initially it was for all restaurants with a drive-through. And through the process, we ended up landing on making it limited to just coffee or coffee kiosks as part of it for the discussion for the council. So this was not something that the council had previously seen. And so rather than striking it completely from the discussion tonight, we wanted to at least put it out there for the council to decide if they wanted to take it out or not.
And you did reach out and give us a heads up. And I agree with Councilor Seither that I just, any zoning change or amendment, we have a defined process for how we evaluate those, and usually it involves a public hearing and going to the planning board, and our decision is informed by that process. I just don't want to, this on the surface, I don't think I'd have a problem with it, but I just would prefer to go through that process for it.
Any other discussion on this item, Councilor Hamel?
One comment, this is a good example of the process we're following. Okay, it's just real time. We're looking at a document that was redlined, several hours ago, was just posted before then. This is a good example of the process that we're following, or more appropriately, I don't know what you call it. I would say on this thing, however, about the drive-through restaurants, I'm not going to vote in favor of it. But if it were Chick-fil-A, I could be persuaded.
All right, so Kristen, are there any other discussion on this item? On this amendment? All right, Kristen, would you like to call the vote?
Counselor Seither,
Yes.
Counselor Calucci,
Yes.
Counselor Shute,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
Yes.
Counselor McGee,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson,
Yes.
vote unanimous.
So again, just circling back, general discussion. Anything, I know there's been concern about the number, the 7.21 million. So is there any discussion from the council on that particular item that they would like to share or discuss? Councilor Shoup?
I mean, first, I just want to say, I read all the emails we receive. I hear all the comments that are coming tonight. I personally feel benefit the fact that my property value has increased in the last couple of years living in this town. I think having a good school system does increase, the value of your property. I was a real estate agent for a very short time. Real estate is all about location, location, location. So maybe a couple of years ago, this location was not worth as much as it is today. I put a lot of credence and value in the professionals that we hire to do the due diligence in the professions and that they have. We hired an appraiser who is very good, and he did his very due diligence. And, as we have said, that they came in with an appraisal that they adjusted. And I think we've indicated that our appraisal was substantially different than the Downs, and this is a good deal. I think also that my understanding is IDEX paid about $7 million for the land that they acquired. And so I think those are the kind of the considerations that come into my mind is I'm not an expert on property values. I am relying on the appraisers that we have to come back, and this is the information that we got. I personally do not see the value of any land within 2 miles of this municipal campus being less than that. And I don't see any of the other lands that we considered previously, maybe it would cost less, but infrastructure would ultimately bring the value of that project higher. So I do support and I understand the reasoning behind how we got to this value.
Counselor McGee?
So I've struggled with this quite a bit, and just for anyone here at this table or anyone at home wondering how I'm going to arrive at my vote tonight, I'd like to give you a little context behind it. First thing I would like to say is that the work from the building committee and the school board has been extraordinary up to this point. And to be clear, what we have in front of us are their number one choice. And I believe this is pretty much unanimous between the building committee and the school board to send this to us, which is this is their number one choice. This is their number one location. And this is what they want this community to pursue. The council then picked up the work to make this deal come through, and I can't say thank you enough to the team that went in and negotiated with such a tight schedule and a tight window. The number of hours that they've put into this, for better, for worse, whether you like what's the outcome has been, the number of hours is really admirable. It is way above and beyond your roles. So appreciate that, and including Tom and other members of the community and members of the school board too that have put in all this time. So that said, I think what I don't want to be is an impediment for you, the voter, or anyone else at home to have their say on whether this is the right solution. Personally, my feelings are what they are, and I'm not sure I'm convinced this is the right solution, but what I am convinced of is that the people should have an opportunity to voice whether or not they support this or don't. And that's where I'm ultimately landing on this. There's probably, a dozen reasons people could pick apart why this isn't the best deal, why it's not the best location. They might not even be convinced that a consolidated school is the right answer, but those are expressions that can be made at the polls. And I would say, don't ask me as a counselor to stop that from you expressing how you feel about this project in its entirety. So that said, the only other comment I would have here, and I'm not trying to be completely tongue in cheek, I am actually being a little serious here, is we're about to spend over $300,000 an acre for a parcel of land. At what point does our assessment catch up with that? This is a landlocked piece of land in the Downs, and I don't know how many acres they have left in there, but when do our valuations of their land reflect what we're being told it's now worth? When do we recoup some of that taxable value? So that's my final thought on this. Thanks.
Yep. Any other counselors Counselor Clucci?
I don't know if it's specific to the price, but I'll be a little scatterbrained. So 7.2 million, it's a lot of money. Okay, and it's partially my money, it's partially yours, it's all of yours. That having been said, the time to fix the problem with our schools is now. It's urgent. There's a baby boom coming up through the pipeline, and we're not going to have room in a couple of years in our K-2 schools. We're going to have to make bad decisions to try to accommodate what's coming. In that context, I think this is probably a bad decision. It's a horrible deal. I hate the deal. If you want to talk price, it's buffer land, it's land that it's landlocked. So yeah, no, we're not making zoning changes now. I'm going to evaluate every one of those decisions on the merits at the time. That having been said, this is as close as we could come to an agreement for an option. It's not a purchase, it's an option to purchase. And there's a lot of outs for both parties. So it's I guess it's the start of a marriage, or midway through the marriage now, but we're walking towards an endpoint together. And I think the best way to get there right now is for us to all be on the same page, to all be working together. if that can happen, we need to know that somewhat soon so we can evaluate other options. That's why I wanted to put the time-bound date in there. So yeah, I could give you 1,000 reasons to vote no for this thing. But I think the big picture, it's the right time to fix the problems with our schools, and this is a solution that can do it. And this is the place for it. It's the right location. And I moved here for our neighborhood schools, by the way. So I do not say that lightly. That's it.
Counselor Slifer?
I'll start by saying, when I know how I'm gonna vote, I typically bring my little notebook and I have my prepared notes so that I stay on track and I don't meander down this long road. And so many of the public speakers got up and said that everyone had already made up their minds. I think you're looking at 6 people in the room and 1 person online who had not made up their mind. There are parts of this that we are all struggling with. And ultimately, you can drill down on all kinds of things, whether it's the Track View Terrace access, which obviously, as homeowners and those of us who are raising young families, and that resonates, of course. This is a lot of money. It hurt yesterday morning to wake up to Facebook posts about the total amount that the Downs paid versus what we are now finding ourselves paying for this parcel. I mean, that was a gut punch. We're all residents. We're all invested in these same decisions. My taxes are going to go up too. And so when it comes to removing myself from all of those things, all of those emotions, I have a job to do. And at the end of the day, I am a liaison to the Building Steering Committee. The Building Steering Committee voted unanimously to select a site within the Downs. That decision was sent to the school board, who also voted unanimously to send it to the council. My role as the council was to authorize the town manager to enter into negotiations to negotiate a deal for a property in the Downs. All of those things have been carried out. Tom and the negotiating team and John have spent countless hours, as other counselors have said, well above the expectations of a counselor to try and bring the 2 parties together. We brought in professionals. We had separate appraisals done. As far as I'm concerned, the job was done. And now I have the option in front of me, which is to either approve this and move this forward, or to say, I think this is a bad deal and I'm not going to put it forward. I don't think that one person should get to do that. And so I'm going to support the deal. In terms of Tom, authorizing Tom to sign what's in front of us. Because I think as Nick said, this is ultimately going to the voters, and it's not my place to stop this or to ultimately decide this isn't the right deal, or because for every person who speaks or emails or sends me an email and tells me I'm an idiot, there are people who applaud my letter to the editor or who thank me on the playground for looking out for the best interests of their kids. And so, sorry, I didn't mean to be so long-winded. And so that's where I'm at. So thank you. Sorry.
Counselor Katarina, is there anything?
No, I think my fellow counselors have encapsulated it in toto. I mean, this has not been an easy decision. This real estate market, for you who know me, I deal with it every day. It's a crazy market. And every day I'm saying, what the heck? They're paying how much for what? But that being said, I think we need to move forward. Today's the day to say, okay, let the manager move forward, see what he can get done. And I will repeat it again. My little thing is, if not now, when? Because we need to do something. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Yep. And I will add, I'm going to support this tonight. And as Counselor Scyther said, you know, I came in today going many different ways. The thing that keeps me focused is that at the end of the day, we have a crisis looming and we need a solution and we need land. And this is a great site. And based on the, you know, good faith partnership that we've tried to do over the past 8 months to move this forward, what we have is really a good deal for the town. There are other alternative sites, but as was mentioned, what they may provide in purchase price, they're going to lack in location and additional costs to mitigate wetlands, infrastructure, you know, other offsite traffic improvements. So, you know, the total cost of what other sites are going to bring to this are going to be comparable, if not more than what we're contemplating with this particular option agreement. I love, Councilor Cucci, your analogy about marriage. And I was trying to think of like, how do we build on that to like better explain what we're doing here? Because, you know, at the end of the day, we're authorizing the town manager to have an agreement that ultimately will get built into the bond, where it's not our decision whether that's the right thing. It's everyone in Scarborough's decision, which is excellent because the crisis we're dealing with the schools is really everybody's responsibility to have some ownership and decision in. And so this is just one key step in trying to move that forward. And if this particular land deal is something that's difficult for people to swallow, to get past, to vote to support our schools and help with significant programming and facility inadequacies that we have, that we know are going to get much, much worse if we don't do anything, you know, that's okay. Like, that's okay. If you don't want to vote for this because you don't like the size of the school in the future, like, that's okay. Like, everybody's going to have to look at this and decide what is it that they value, what's important to them. And our job is to bring that decision and the information and educate you as best we can to help you make the best informed decision as you vote on this. So I am going to support it tonight. I'm not supporting it as like Councilor Pucci said, in love with it. But I think it's a good deal. It's a good deal for the town and it's good for the school. And I think it's good for the developers. So hopefully we can meet that August 9th deadline and move forward. So with that,
I have not had a chance to speak.
oh, Councilor Hamel.
Thank you. And, you know, far be it from me to seek the award for being Dr. No here, but I got into politics in 2018 along with Ms. Scyther, and Ms. Katerina was there at the time. And I think Jean Marie and I are the only two people on the council now who actually voted on that 2018 CEA. And she voted in favor of it. I voted against it along with two others, Paul Johnson and Peter Hayes. It was a 4-3 vote. And there were a lot of questions at that time. And we engaged in a relationship with the Downs. And in the past 4 or 5 years, you know, their success has been unquestioned. Our relative benefits are a serious question. Our job as a council is to represent the public, not just the schools, not primarily the schools. The school's job is to represent exclusively the interests of the students. In our helping and participating to move this forward as a council, I believe we've overstepped our bounds. I believe that we have, instead of trying to keep it balanced and to ask for other options, we've run down the road with the plan A that has never been changed in any substantive way. And now we're at a point where we're basically saying, let the voters decide. So I think ultimately that's the right thing, that the voters will decide. But I am very fearful that that could very much be, you know, a statement from the public, not only on us as a council, but also us as a town, as a public, and also a statement from the public on how they feel about the Downs. So I am voting no for the reasons I stated previously. I don't think this is ready for prime time. We don't have an agreement. I'll see where we are, you know, by the 16th, but I wish I could be more optimistic. we've done everything humanly possible to get us to this point, and that we knew this was going to be a very hard tooth to pull. So I regret that I have to part company with my fellow counselors, but I did not arrive at this position without a great deal of thought and without a great deal of effort as well, to all of our efforts to try to get us to this point.
Great. So I think with that, I'm going to call the vote. So Kristen, can you please call the vote?
Counselor Seither,
Yes.
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Shute,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes.
Counselor Hamel,
No,
Counselor McGee,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson,
Yes.
motion passed.
All right. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second.
Kristen, would you mind calling the vote?
Counselor Seither,
Yes.
Counselor Clucci,
Yes.
Counselor Shute,
Yes.
Counselor Katerina,
Yes, thank you.
Counselor Hamel,
yes.
Counselor McGee,
Yes.
Chairman Anderson.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody.